I still remember the feeling I had that day like it was etched in my mind forever. My wife, Lisa, and I had been married for 5 years, and honestly, for the most part, I thought we had a good thing going. Sure, there were disagreements, but nothing out of the ordinary. At least that's what I told myself. We decided to go on this family vacation with my best friend Mark and his wife Jenny. It was supposed to be a relaxing week at the beach, a chance to unwind and reconnect. But from the moment we arrived, something felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on it. Lisa had been acting weird from the start. She was overly flirtatious with Mark, laughing a little too hard at his jokes, leaning into him more than usual. I even caught her giving him this sort of sly smile when she thought I wasn't looking. I brushed it off as my paranoia, telling myself maybe she was just excited or trying to be friendly. But then there was the small stuff, her phone buzzing constantly, her sneaking quick looks at her screen when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She'd always been a bit secretive about her phone, but now it looked like she was hiding something. I'd try to talk to her about it, but she'd brush me off, say I was reading too much into things or accuse me of being insecure. The first real sign that something was seriously wrong came on the third day. We had gone out for dinner, and Lisa said she was tired and wanted to stay in. She insisted she was going to go to the spa the next morning, claiming she needed some me time to relax. I didn't think much of it at first, but I noticed how she kept checking her phone before she left, acting nervous and fidgety. She told me she'd be back in a few hours, maybe even before lunch. I just nodded, thinking she deserved some time for herself. But deep down, I was questioning everything. Why was she so eager to go alone? Why was she so nervous about it? It didn't make sense. That night, I stayed up a little later than usual, just to keep an eye on the place. I figured maybe she'd be back by then, or I could catch her in some lie if she was sneaking around. And sure enough, around midnight I heard footsteps outside our door. I got up and quietly opened the door just a crack. There was Lisa, tiptoeing back into the room, her face flushed and looking like she'd been running a marathon. She nearly jumped out of her skin when she saw me. I asked her where she'd been, and she gave me that bitchy, dismissive look she always uses when she's annoyed. "I told you I was at the spa, did I? Maybe if you trusted me a little more, you know I wouldn't do anything shady." But I wasn't buying it. Something about the way she was acting, her shifty eyes, her shaky voice, none of it added up. That's when I decided to check her phone. I mean, what's the point of being married if you're just going to pretend everything's fine when it's clearly not? I grabbed her phone from her purse while she was sleeping, and what I found made my stomach drop. There were texts, hot, suggestive texts between her and Mark. Not just friendly banter, but outright flirtation, talking about meeting up later, disconnecting from the world, and some downright explicit stuff. I read through the messages, feeling this boiling rage and heartbreak build up inside me. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that, especially with my best friend? I stayed up all night, staring at those messages, trying to process what I just discovered. Part of me wanted to wake her up right then and there, confront her in front of everyone, but I was too stunned. Instead, I kept the phone in my pocket and kept quiet, trying to figure out what to do next. That was the moment I realized my wife, Lisa, wasn't just a little flirt. She'd been cheating on me for who knows how long, and with my best friend of all people. It felt like my world was crashing down around me, and I had no idea how I was going to handle the fallout. The next morning was like waking up in a nightmare. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling numb and furious all at once. I kept replaying everything I'd seen, the texts, her sneaking back into the room, that fake smile when I'd asked her about her whereabouts. I knew. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it half asleep or in the heat of the moment. I needed a plan, some kind of control over what was about to happen. When she finally got out of bed, still looking a little flustered, I called her out. I asked her straight up about the messages, what she was doing with Mark, and why she lied about the spa. Her face instantly shut down. She looked angry, annoyed, like I was the one invading her privacy. "It's none of your business," she snapped. "I was just talking to him, okay? Nothing happened. You're being paranoid." Her tone was dismissive, and her eyes had that sharp, bitchy glare that told me she was trying to gaslight me. She kept insisting she wasn't cheating, that I was imagining things, that I was insecure and jealous. I could see her trying to manipulate the situation, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I decided to push a little harder. I told her I'd read the messages, that I knew she was lying. Her reaction: she threw her hands up, rolled her eyes, and said I was overreacting, that Mark was just a buddy, and she was only talking to him because she was bored. She claimed she went to the spa to relax, that I was accusing her of something she didn't do. But I knew better. The tone, the lies, the way she avoided eye contact, everything screamed guilt. I told her I needed time to think, and I went for a walk on the beach to clear my head. The entire day I was battling this whirlwind of emotions: hurt, anger, betrayal. I couldn't believe she'd been lying to me, hiding this affair all along. And Mark, my best friend, how could they do this to me? How could my wife, the woman I loved, sleep with my best friend? It felt like my life had been turned upside down overnight. That night, back in the hotel room, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what to do next. I felt the urge to confront them both directly, but part of me was afraid of what might happen if I did. I was furious, but I also felt a deep sadness, like I'd lost something I never thought I'd lose. I never imagined Lisa would be capable of betraying me so ruthlessly, especially with someone I trusted. The heartbreak made my chest ache. I wondered how I had missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to what was happening right under my nose. In those quiet, dark hours, I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to decide whether to let this go, to forgive and forget, or to fight for something different. But I knew one thing: I couldn't keep living in this lie. The truth was out, and now it was just about how I was going to handle the fallout. I felt like I was drowning in this flood of betrayal, and I didn't know if I'd ever come up for air. The following morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The weight of everything hit me all at once: the betrayal, the lies, the fact that my wife, Lisa, had been screwing my best friend, Mark. I kept replaying the last few days, trying to find some way to make sense of it all, but there was no logic in betrayal this deep. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just storm in and accuse them both without evidence, and I definitely didn't want to do anything hasty that I'd regret later. So I decided to gather more proof. I knew Lisa was sneaky, but I also knew she liked to leave clues behind, things she thought I wouldn't notice. I started by going through her phone again just to be sure I missed nothing. Sure enough, I found more texts, this time more explicit and even more damning. They had been planning more meetings, more sneaky rendezvous, and she'd been flat out lying about her whereabouts. The worst part: she'd been so confident she could get away with it, acting bitchy and dismissive whenever I pressed her. I saw her face when I confronted her again later that day, and her attitude was even more arrogant, like she thought she was untouchable. That's when I decided I had enough. I couldn't live with this secret anymore. If I was going to do something, it had to be something big, something that would make her realize I wasn't just some pushover. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal. I spent the next couple of hours planning my move. I knew Mark was supposed to meet her that evening at some bar, and I decided I was going to be there waiting. Not to fight, not to scream, but to catch them in the act if I had to. I wanted concrete proof, and I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to turn a blind eye anymore. That evening, I parked my car near the bar and waited. I kept my distance, pretending to be just another onlooker, but I stayed alert. I saw Lisa walk in with Mark, just like I knew she would. She was all smiles, flirting a little, acting like she owned the place. Mark looked equally comfortable, like they'd planned this all along. I watched them from across the street as they disappeared inside. My stomach was in knots. I knew what I was about to do was going to change everything, but I also knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know what was happening. While I waited, I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. Part of me wanted to burst in and ruin everything right then and there, but I also knew that revenge needed to be calculated, not impulsive. I'd come this far, and I wasn't going to back down now. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of them through the window, Lisa leaning into Mark, her hand on his knee, her face lit up with that bitchy, flirtatious grin. It was all the proof I needed. For the first time since this started, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd catch her, and then I'd decide what to do next. But one thing was certain: I was done being the fool. I was about to show her I wasn't as weak as she thought I was. As I sat there across the street, watching Lisa and Mark through the window, my heart was pounding like I'd just run a marathon. Every second felt like it was dragging, but I knew I had to stay calm. I snapped a few more pictures, making sure I had undeniable proof. She was giggling, leaning into him, touching his arm, so damn blatant it made my stomach turn. This wasn't some innocent flirtation. She was full-on cheating right in front of my face, and I was just a powerless spectator. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. I stayed there for about an hour, watching them share drinks, whisper, and laugh like they didn't have a care in the world. I felt betrayed on a level I'd never experienced before. My best friend, Mark, who I'd trusted with everything, was screwing my wife, and obviously they'd been doing it for a while. The thought made me want to scream, but I kept my composure, knowing that I needed to handle this carefully. I finally decided to head back to the hotel and confront Lisa with everything I'd gathered. I knew she'd deny it, call me paranoid, or try to make me feel guilty. But I had proof now, and I wasn't going to let her gaslight me again. When I got back to the room, Lisa was lying on the bed, scrolling through her phone, acting all innocent. I walked straight up to her, put the pictures on the table, and looked her right in the eyes. Her face changed instantly, the arrogance replaced with a flicker of panic. I didn't say a word at first. I just let the evidence speak for itself. She stared at the images, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to come up with an excuse. I could see her eyes darting around, trying to find some way out of this mess. "Lisa," I finally said, my voice cold and controlled, "this is what you've been hiding. You've been fucking Mark, haven't you? And you lied about going to the spa, lying about everything, even to my face." Her reaction was swift. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and shot back, "Oh, stop being such a jealous, insecure idiot. You think I haven't been feeling suffocated. You're just overreacting because you're a damn fool." Her words hit me like a punch. She was so bitchy, so dismissive, like she didn't even care that she just shattered everything we built. I couldn't hold back anymore. My voice cracked, but I managed to keep it steady. "You lied to me every single day. You cheated on me with my best friend, and you think I'm just supposed to forgive that. How many times did you lie? How many times did you pretend to be innocent while screwing him behind my back?" She sneered at me, saying I was overreacting, that I was causing a scene, but I wasn't going to let her dismiss this anymore. The betrayal cut too deep. I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with anything. I told her I needed time to think, to process what just happened. I told her I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive her, not after this. She rolled her eyes again, acting like I was the crazy one, and said she didn't even care if I stayed or left. That was the moment I realized that this wasn't about fixing things anymore. It was about me finally facing the truth and deciding what I was willing to accept. I looked at her, feeling a mix of heartbreak, anger, and that gut-wrenching disappointment that drains your soul. I knew the betrayal was done, but the emotional aftermath was just beginning. After that confrontation, I felt like I had been ripped in two. Part of me was filled with rage, pure and raw, and the other part was drowning in sadness. I couldn't believe I had been so blind, so trusting, only to be betrayed at my worst moment. I stayed in the room, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of everything. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, pretending that everything was okay. The decision was clear. I had to end it. Not just for me, but for my sanity. I couldn't stay in a marriage where trust had been shattered so completely, where the woman I loved had lied, cheated, and dismissed my pain like it was nothing. I packed my bag quietly while Lisa was still sitting on the bed, acting like she didn't care. I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. I just wanted out. The hotel room suddenly felt suffocating, like I was trapped inside a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I told her I was leaving, that I couldn't stay with someone who had done this to me. Her reaction was typical. She threw her head back, scoffing, then said, "Good riddance. You're better off without me. Honestly, I was bored with you anyway." That bitchy, dismissive attitude made me feel a strange mixture of relief and disgust. The relief because I knew I was finally freeing myself from her poison, and disgust because I realized how little she cared about what she just destroyed. I left the hotel in a rush, not even bothering to say goodbye. I drove away, feeling like I was leaving behind a nightmare I couldn't escape fast enough. All I wanted was to get away from her and from the betrayal that cut so deep. The drive was silent, just me alone with my thoughts, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. My head was spinning, but inside, I knew this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I'd rebuild from the ashes. But first I had to face the pain, the anger, and the heartbreak. I had to accept that the woman I loved, the woman I married, had been lying to me for who knows how long. And the worst part, the pain of knowing that my best friend Mark had been a part of it, that he too had betrayed me in the worst way possible. That night I stayed in a cheap motel. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts, but I had no choice. I kept replaying everything, trying to figure out how I missed the signs, how I'd been so blind. The betrayal was like a knife twisting deeper into my chest every time I thought about the moments I'd ignored, the signs I'd dismissed, the good times I'd taken for granted. I knew I had to start healing, but it felt impossible right then. All I could do was sit there, listen to the silence, and promise myself I wouldn't let her or Mark destroy me completely. I'd find a way to move on somehow, even if it took everything I had. In the days that followed, I did my best to keep busy, but honestly, it was a blur of anger, pain, and disbelief. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her smile, and the way she looked at Mark like he was the only person that mattered. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen it coming, how I'd been so stupid to trust her after all we'd been through. But eventually, I realized some truths hit harder than anything else. She was never the woman I thought she was. She was selfish, manipulative, and completely indifferent to the damage she'd caused. I cut all contact with her, blocked her number, and refused to let her manipulate her way back into my life. It hurt, but I knew I had to stay strong. I spent weeks healing, talking to friends, working out, and going to therapy. It wasn't easy, but the pain slowly started to fade, replaced with a sense of clarity. I learned that betrayal like this changes you, but it also teaches you who you really are. I'd been a fool, but I refused to be that fool anymore. I realized I deserved better. I deserved someone honest, someone who wouldn't lie and cheat and dismiss my feelings like they meant nothing. Looking back, I see now that this whole nightmare was a wake-up call. I learned to trust my instincts more, to see the signs I'd ignored, and to value myself enough to walk away from toxicity. I also learned that sometimes, the people you think are your best friends can turn out to be the worst enemies. Mark's betrayal cut deep, but in the end I understood I couldn't stay angry forever. I had to forgive myself for trusting blindly and accept that sometimes, life throws you into chaos to teach you a lesson. Today, I'm in a better place. I don't have her lying to me anymore, and I don't have to wonder if she's hiding something. I've started over, focusing on myself and rebuilding my life piece by piece. It's not perfect, and I won't pretend it is, but I know I'm stronger now. I've learned that betrayal inflicts pain, but it also reveals your true strength. And I want anyone reading this to know, if you're going through something similar, you're not alone. You'll survive, and eventually you'll find your way out of the darkness. Trust me, healing is possible. You just have to believe in yourself enough to walk away from the people who don't deserve your trust.